What's happening, everyone? I'm James Lynch. This is Early Look. Today, we're going to be previewing the UFC 288 main event, which features bantamweight champion Aljamain Sterling defending his title against Henry Cejudo in a very, very, very interesting matchup coming up on May 6th in New Jersey. Let's get right into it. Again, headlining the card here, 5-round fight. Quick tail of the tape between these two. We've got Aljamain Sterling at 22-3, Henry Cejudo at 16-2, 33 years old for the Funkmaster, 36 years old for Henry Cejudo. Sterling is 5'7", Cejudo 5'4", 71-inch reach for Sterling, 67.5-inch reach for Henry Cejudo. And if you haven't watched the show before, I'm going to go through a bunch of different stats, a bunch of different intangibles, and then at the end, I'm going to give my pick. Some of this stuff may have relevance, it may not, but that's why you're watching here today. You guys can decide after all the information I presented to you. So I'm going to start first with the bantamweight champion, Aljamain Sterling. We're going to go through a bunch of cool stuff about him. All right, Aljamain Sterling, 22-3 record. He's got 3 knockouts, 8 submissions, and 10 decisions. He's 33 years old. He's 5'7" with a 71-inch reach. So Sterling going to be 3 years younger. He's got a 3-inch height and 3.5-inch reach advantage in this fight. He's a BJJ black belt who trains at a Cerro Longo and a bit over in Vegas at Syndicate MMA a little bit. Also working a bit with Eric. He's kind of working at both gyms there, as far as I've heard, out in Vegas and at the PI too. So getting a little bit of looks everywhere. He's had 2 successful title defenses, Aljamain Sterling, that is. If you look at it's saying 2 successful title defenses. Let me just do the math here. I guess technically because he defended against Jan and then Dillashaw because he won the title in the first fight. Anyways, never mind. I'm rambling on. He's got performance of the night one time against Corey Sandhagen. He is tied with TJ Dillashaw for most wins in UFC bantamweight division history at 13. He's also tied with Merab Dvalishvili for the longest winning streak in UFC bantamweight division history, sitting at 8. Sterling made his amateur debut way back in 2009, May of 2009. Made his MMA debut in April of 2011 and made his UFC debut in February of 2014 against Cody Gibson. He is 14-3 in the UFC. He's got 7 stoppage wins. Some notable wins for Sterling include Renan Barão, the former champion. Brett Johns was undefeated at the time. We'll put that on the list too. That was a very good win for him at the time. Cody Stamann was 17-1 at the time. That was a good win. Jimmy Rivera was ranked when he defeated him there. Pedro Munoz, very good win, especially with what Pedro did last weekend against Chris Gutierrez. Corey Sandhagen, still the only fighter to finish Corey Sandhagen in his entire career. That's got to count for something. I think people glance over that win far too much. Very good win there for him over Corey Sandhagen. And then he's got the 2 wins over Jan. The first one, you don't have to tell me twice. Okay, I feel like this has been exhausted. Yes, it should have been a no contest, or they should have done something different with that one. But we'll call that a no contest. And then he did defeat Jan in the rematch. I know it was a split decision, but we can talk about those scorecards in a second. And then some notable losses include Brian Caraway, which was interesting. We'll talk about that decision. Rafael Sunsao, and then got finished by Marlon Moraes. Marlon Moraes still the only fighter to finish him in the UFC. So had a couple injuries over the years, Sterling that is. I think people forget he was supposed to fight Mitch Gagnon back in October of 2014 and an injury there. He was supposed to fight a Sunsao at UFC Fight Night 102, had to withdraw due to undisclosed reasons. Then he was supposed to fight Petr Yan. Their rematch was supposed to take place at UFC 267. He had a neck injury, so needed some more time off for that. So he's had a few injuries throughout his career, but overall been pretty active. But he does have a few layoffs as well, saying that. I know I'm kind of countering myself by saying that there. But, in general, he's fighting like twice a year. But he's had a few layoffs here. So going from Brian Caraway to a Sunsao, we mentioned the injury there. He had a 244-day layoff. Going from Pedro Munoz to Corey Sandhagen, there was a 364-day layoff. Going from Corey Sandhagen to Petr Yan, there was a 273-day layoff. And then going from Jan to Jan, there was a 399-day layoff. He fought Dillashaw in October. Not a big layoff coming into this fight whatsoever. This is definitely a good amount of time to have off. I mentioned a couple close fights that Sterling's have. We'll go through those right now. So the Brian Caraway fight, that was again at UFC Fight Night 88, May of 2016. 11 media members scored the fight for Caraway. 13 scored it a draw, and only 1 scored it for Sterling. So I think most feel that should have been a draw instead of a win there for Brian Caraway. The Rafael Sunsao fight, January 2017, UFC on Fox 23. 14 media members had the fight for a Sunsao. 1 had it a draw, and 3 for Sterling. So again, people felt like Sunsao did do enough in that fight to get it done. And then the other one we'll mention, which I forgot to write down here, we'll just look at this live. Petr Yan MMA decisions. This is the media scorecards. And so if you look at the Sterling defeats Yan at UFC 273, You can see there, majority still felt that Sterling won. You can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 people thought that Sterling won the fight. We had 5 people scoring at a draw, and we had 2 people scoring at a fight for Jan. I see a lot of people bring that up, that Jan should have won that fight. I don't know. I watched. I thought Sterling won, but again, that could be the fact that people don't like Sterling, which is understandable in certain regards. And then just the other thing with Sterling, a couple quick stats for you guys to chew on here. Sterling's significant striking accuracy is at 51%. He's got a 41% takedown defense. He's got a 61% significant strikes defense, meaning he doesn't get hit that much. And the average takedowns landed per 15 minutes for Sterling is 1.98. Now, he's fighting an Olympic wrestler here in Cejudo. Probably not going to happen in this one, but got to mention those stats anyway. So that's everything you need to know about Aljamain Sterling. Bit of a weird title run, right, so far. Wins the title on this weird illegal knee thing, and then fights Jan, beats him decisively. And then we didn't get to see anything against Dillashaw. That was just, I mean, let's call it like it is. That was a throwaway fight. Dillashaw shouldn't have been fighting. That should have been Jose Aldo's fight. It's unfortunate what happened with Dillashaw. I mean, I get it from Dillashaw's perspective. Guys got to get paid. But you could tell from the opening bell, Dillashaw was maybe 30-40% in that fight. And Sterling took advantage and got a finish there. So really, if you think about it, I mean, that was kind of a gimme finish there for Sterling just because Dillashaw was injured. So that's everything you need to know about Aljamain Sterling. Let's talk about his opponent, Henry Cejudo. Now, I will point out the obvious. I maintain, and I said at the beginning of the year, I don't think Cejudo ever fights again. We're getting closer and closer to that date. It looks like he is going to end up fighting. But yeah, I just thought for a while that they couldn't figure out the money with Cejudo because I always felt like he thought he was worth more than he actually is, than what the UFC was willing to give him. And that's why we hadn't seen him fight in a while. So I am a bit surprised to see him have this fight. But hey, listen, I'm willing to eat some crow on this and see that Cejudo is going to make it to the fight. So let's talk about him. 16-2 record. 8 knockouts, 0 submissions, and 8 decisions. I mentioned it there. He's 36 years old. He's 5'4" with a 67.5-inch reach. No advantages on paper over Sterling in terms of, height, reach, age, all that stuff. He's the former UFC flyweight champion, former UFC bantamweight champion. He's the only fighter in MMA history to win an Olympic gold medal and a UFC title. He's also got a yellow belt in Shotokan karate, and he trains at a fight-ready gym with Captain Eric. I mentioned it there. He's the one-time bantamweight champion. He had 1 successful title defense against Dominic Cruz. He's the one-time flyweight champion, and he had 1 successful title defense against TJ Dillashaw. He is the 7th multi-division champion in UFC history. He's the 4th simultaneous multi-division champion in MMA history. He's got Fight of the Night 1 time against Demetrius Johnson, and he's also got Performance of the Night 3 times against Wilson Hayes, TJ Dillashaw, and Marlon Moraes as well. Cejudo did not have an amateur debut, obviously coming from the wrestling world. Made his MMA debut in March of 2013 there for WFF promotion. Now, at that point, Aljamain Sterling already had seven MMA fights. So just sort of talking about the experience gap there. And then didn't make his debut until December of 2014. And so Aljo had made his UFC debut 9 months earlier than that. So as far as them getting in the UFC was around the same time, but as far as like actual MMA fights, Sterling obviously been doing that a little bit longer. And here's an interesting thing I think people forget. Cejudo's debut was at bantamweight. I kind of forgot that. He fought Dustin Kimura and ended up getting a decision victory there. But a good chunk of his fights have been at flyweight. So we'll talk about that in a sec. But Cejudo is 10-2 in the UFC. Some notable wins include Yusir Formiga, who was ranked at the time, Wilson Hayes was ranked at the time, Sergio Pettis, Demetrius Johnson, TJ Dillashaw, Marlon Moraes, and Dominic Cruz. Some notable losses include Joseph Benavidez and Demetrius Johnson. Demetrius Johnson is still the only fighter to ever finish Henry Cejudo, so that's a pretty big feather in his cap. Mentioned the different weight classes. Cejudo has fought 7 times at bantamweight. This will be his 8th fight. He's fought 9 times at flyweight, and he's had 2 catchweight fights. So one of them was a catchweight of 128, and then there was another one, a catchweight of 128.5, in a fight that he missed weight. I might have been this one. Yeah, it was the fight in Legacy for at flyweight. He missed weight at 128.5 for a 126 fight. So yeah, I think people forget early on Cejudo had trouble making 125, but that was sort of corrected for a couple years. And yeah, mainly a mainstay at bantamweight. Now, he's had a couple injuries in his career. Let's talk about those. Supposed to fight Scott Jorgensen at UFC 177, but Cejudo had medical issues related to a weight cut. See what I'm talking about? He had some issues there making the weight. So yeah, that obviously under control now, but one thing we do have to point out. And then he was supposed to fight Sergio Pettis at UFC 211. However, he had a hand injury in that fight, but not a ton of injuries throughout his career. Now, I mentioned, he's had a few layoffs here, especially going into this fight, but let's talk about some some of the other layoffs he's had. He only ever had one sort of major layoff there. That was from going from Marlon Moraes to Dominic Cruz. There was a 336-day layoff, but going from Dominic Cruz to Aljamain Sterling, 1,092 days. That's how long of a layoff it's been since Cejudo last fought. And Sterling, I mean, so that fight was in May of 2020. Since then, Sterling has had 5 fights since Cejudo last fought. So that's, again, if you're a believer in activity, then maybe that favors Cejudo for sure. I mentioned some close fights here with Cejudo. Let's go through them. So he had first let's talk about the fight against Joseph Benavidez. That was a split decision, tough 24 finale, December 2016. 5 media members scoring the fight for Benavidez, 8 scoring it a draw, and 5 scoring it for Cejudo. So that could have either gone Cejudo's way. I think watching it, I thought Cejudo did win. But yeah, Cejudo, or it could have been a draw. Majority felt it was a draw because there was a point deduction in that fight. And then the Demetrius Johnson fight, which was a split decision here back at UFC 227 where he won. August 2018, 13 media members scoring the fight for Cejudo, 12 scoring it for Demetrius Johnson. This was a fight where I do remember watching and thinking Demetrius Johnson won. But again, maybe need to rewatch that again. So, I mean, it really doesn't matter because, again, Benavidez could have gone his way and then Demetrius could have gone the other way. It didn't matter, although that would have mattered because he wouldn't have been able to, win the title and fight TJ Dillashaw. So there's a lot of things that sort of happened there. But yeah, he's only had 2 real close fights in his career. Now let's get to some stats with Cejudo here. You can see he's got a significant striking accuracy of 45%. He's got striking defense of 65%. So one thing we've known with both of these guys, they do not get hit a ton. So that's one thing to sort of keep in mind in here. Average takedowns landed per 15 minutes is 2.12. So Cejudo getting, anywhere from, just over 2 takedowns every 15 minutes. And check out this takedown defense, 93%. Now, I don't know if Sterling's going to try and get this to the ground anyways. We'll see. But 93% takedown defense. That's pretty crazy. That's got to be one of the highest in the UFC as far as Cejudo's wrestling pedigree. And obviously he's a gold medal. So that would make sense that he's got a pretty high ceiling there. Now, let's get to the odds here. So you can see there, Sterling and Cejudo, some books having Sterling the favorite, some having Cejudo there. The odds actually changed at the time I was doing this, but you can see the average here. If you go to best fight odds, it takes the average of all the books. So actually the average has Cejudo as the favorite at -117, Sterling at -103. This is a really trickery fight for a variety of reasons, because obviously style-wise, Cejudo's wrestling is a very big problem here for Sterling. Not that Sterling's, struggled with wrestlers throughout his career. It's just he's fighting a really good high-level wrestler. Cejudo's stand-ups come a long way, right? We talked about the knockout win over TJ Dillashaw. We talked about the knockout win over Marlon Moraes. Now, granted, the Dillashaw fight, I think that had a lot to do with the weight cut, and he was more susceptible to getting finished. We haven't really seen Dillashaw get finished like that recently anyways. So there's that. And then, like I mentioned, Cejudo doesn't have a single submission win, right? So ground won't be an issue on his end. Sterling, on the other hand, he's got a pretty decent ground game there. I mentioned it, 8 submissions in his career. So it's possible if this gets to the mat, Sterling has the advantage there. Striking wise, I don't know. I really don't. I know there's going to be people out here saying, Cejudo's the better striker. James, what are you talking about? I don't know, because he doesn't have like at least if you look at the majority of Cejudo's career, it's been a lot of decisions here, right? Like Dillashaw, he finished him there. I talked about the weight cut. Marlon Moraes, yeah, that was a later finish. And Cruz, I'll give him that. That was a very good win there. Cruz is tough to take out. But in general here, you see a lot of decisions here. And maybe that was, before he sort of turned a gear after losing Demetrius Johnson, that he sort of was able to get more finishes there. But, and a lot of these finishes, again, were at flyweight. They weren't at bantamweight. So I do wonder if that power is going to translate, although, finishes over Moraes and Cruz at bantamweight too, which is kind of interesting here. Sterling, like I said, just knocked out the one time by Marlon Moraes. I'm going to cut right to the chase here. I like Aljamain Sterling here. We talked about the huge layoff with Cejudo. I think this is a case of where, and I talk about this a lot when I do these breakdowns, I think it's a case of where people have in their head that this is the same Cejudo we fight Dominic Cruz, the same Cejudo that fought TJ Dillashaw. When you're off for that long, when you're off for over 1,000 days, and it's been a couple years, I can't imagine you're going to be exactly the same fighter, right? And it's not like Sterling is like, one of these champs that, is unproven or anything. I think he's been in the UFC for a while. He's fought good opposition, and he's good everywhere, right? And I think Sterling is getting better and better every fight. It's been pretty evident that way. So, while I do understand people picking Cejudo and saying, oh, he's just going to wrestle him, he's going to beat him, I just don't think that Cejudo exists anymore. I'd be very surprised if it did. He's 36. I know it's not super old, but it's not young either. And that's where I kind of have a hard time picking him here. Now with Sterling, just like I mentioned, 5 fights since Cejudo last fought. A lot more activity. Doesn't take a ton of damage in his fights either, right? Like, it's not even an issue of like, yeah, he's fighting more, but he's taking more damage, like a Max Holloway or something, right? It's not really like that in a lot of his fights. They've all been pretty good wins. And just the wins he's got, like, again, Sandhagen, Jan, these are really solid victories. Top guys in the weight class. It's not like he's beating guys that had undeserved title shots and he was sort of just eking by. Like, you know, again, I thought he clearly beat Jan in the rematch. He finishes Sandhagen. There's no questions asked there. Those are two really, really solid wins here. So it's a 5-round fight. I think it's possible for Sterling to potentially finish this one late, but you got to remember, Cejudo, you know, this is an Olympian. This guy's cardio's got to be good. I think it does end up going the 5 rounds. In fact, I think that might be the play here because I don't think Cejudo finishes Sterling. Like, again, all the evidence that we've seen throughout Sterling's career is that he's a durable guy. He's a tough guy to take out. I think the play here would be the fight goes the distance. But who's it going to go with? It's going to go with Sterling. I have to go with Sterling here. And again, I know there's going to be a lot of people as well who don't like Sterling. And I understand people for not liking him with the way he handled the first Jan win, the way he got the belt, some of the stuff he said. I get people not liking him, but don't let that blind you to this fight, okay? Sterling is more active. He's performed well in the fights that he's had. And again, you have to remember, most of Cejudo's success has been at 125, not 135. Sterling, you know, is talking about going up potentially if Merab's, you know, in this spot, you know, fighting for the title. He's talking about moving up because he can. Do you think Cejudo, I know Cejudo was talking about fighting at 45, but he would get, I think he'd struggle a lot at 45. He is at his best at flyweight, and he's not, to me, there's not enough evidence of him performing well at bantamweight, and that's why I got to go Aljamain Sterling here. So I'm going to go Sterling by decision. I think he gets it done. I just think that if this fight had happened, you know, back in 2020, maybe when Sterling was on the come up, I'd say it's probably even odds. But I do think Sterling is rightfully the favorite, and I think he goes out there and gets it done by decision. So I want to know what you guys think in the comment section below. Who are you picking in this fight? How do you think they get it done? What did you think of some of the points I brought up here today? More than happy to discuss this this fight with you, as long as, you know, we're going to be civil here. I believe in you. I know we can do this. Also, if there's any other fights you guys want me to preview coming up, I usually do all the main events, but if there's any other fun fights you want me to preview here on Early Look, just let me know. I'm more than happy to do it. I'm James Lynch. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.